Welcome to our Bible study. We've just concluded the book of Judges, and today we're going to get into a lesson in the book of Ruth. We'll look at this Sunday and next week as well. The first words of the book of Ruth says, during the time of the Judges. So it's only appropriate we study these books together because the story from Ruth actually took place during the time of the Judges. We don't know who authored the book of Ruth. We don't know the exact time period, but we know it was during that time of the Judges. Now, just a reminder, the time of the Judges was the time from the death of Joshua until the time that King Saul is named the ruler of Israel. And so it's this period of time in there where there were various judges that God raised up to lead Israel, to help Israel through this time period. The book of Ruth is a beautiful, beautiful story. It's a love story, but it's so much more. It's a story of God's work in people's lives to accomplish His purposes. You know, we live our life, what we say, real time. In other words, we live today, and that's proper. We should live every single day and enjoy the life and serve God on this day. And yet, our life and this day is a part of the plan of God. God has purposes that He is accomplishing, and through His children, through you and me, He is using us to accomplish His purposes. You know, as God is using us for those purposes, oftentimes we don't see them in real time. We don't necessarily see what God is doing today. And sometimes we go through rough periods of time. We go through times of sorrow. We go through times of heartache. We go through times of struggle and trials at times. And yet all of those could very well be a part of God's ultimate plan to accomplish His purpose. And after we get to that period and we're able to look back, we can see how God was at work. You know, here I am in my 11th year as a pastor at First Baptist Hendersonville. And if I had looked back to 12 years ago or 13 years ago, I would have no idea that I would be standing here today teaching this Connect Group lesson to people at First Baptist Hendersonville. But God was preparing me years ahead for what He has, and He's preparing me today for what He has in the future as well. Even though we don't see it, God is at work. Now we're going to do something a little bit unusual, a little bit different, but instead of starting at the first of Ruth, we're going to start at the very end of Ruth. I want us to look at the end of the story because I think it will help us as we study these next 2 weeks, these lessons, to know why God was doing what He was doing and how He was at work. Ruth ultimately marries a man named Boaz. And if we look at the end of this book, there is a genealogy. Now, the genealogy closes with David. Yes, that's King David himself. And if you go up and go backwards from verse 22 into verse 21, you see that it says the name Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed, and Obed fathered Jesse, who fathered David. So what does that mean? It means that Ruth, this lady that we're going to be seeing in our scripture passage, is the great-grandmother of King David. Now, who's King David? King David is that great king of Israel from whom the lineage comes, where the Messiah is going to come from the lineage of David. So Jesus himself is in this lineage that comes from Ruth and Boaz. So we get to see the end of the story here. Now let's go back and pick up, and we get to see how the story unfolds. So Ruth chapter 1, it says, during the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. Now, right there, we see some drama taking place. We see challenges. A man left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons to live in the land of Moab for a while. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi, and the names of the 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were from Bethlehem in Judah. They entered the land of Moab, and they settled there. Naomi's husband Elimelech died, and she was left with her 2 sons. Her sons took Moabite women as their wives. One was named Orpah, and the other was named Ruth. After they lived in Moab about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her husband and her 2 children. So we see quite a heartbreaking story take place. Because of the famine, because it was difficult for Elimelech to provide food for his family, he takes his wife Naomi and his 2 sons, and they go to Moab. Now they're from Bethlehem. Moab is on the eastern side of the Dead Sea. Bethlehem is on the western side of the Dead Sea. It's about 75-mile trip from Bethlehem to the place of the land of Moab. So here they are. Now you may have noticed, he says, they headed there for a while. They had no intention of staying there, but they ended up staying there for 10 years. While they were there, Elimelech died, and then the sons died as well. The sons were probably older children, younger teenagers when they went there. And so as they grew and they matured, then it was time for them to start a family of their own. And so both of them married. And yet they died. Both sons passed away. Now, more than likely passed away relatively quickly after the marriage, because no children were involved in this. But here was Naomi. Think about this. From Bethlehem, an Israelite. They go just provide some food for their family until the famine's over. And, think about it. Normally a famine may be for 1 year, maybe 2 years. They weren't planning on staying there, but they ended up staying there for 10 years. And then here she was in this foreign land with a group of people that were not her people, people that were from different faith, different religious backgrounds. The Moabites worshipped all kinds of gods. And so here she was by herself, only Naomi, and then 2 widowed daughter-in-laws. Let's pick up the story. She and her daughter-in-laws were prepared to leave the land of Moab because they heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to his people's need by providing food for them. In other words, she heard the famine was over or food was provided, so she's ready to go back home. She's ready to go back to her people. So she left the place where she was living, accompanied by her 2 daughter-in-laws, and traveled along the road leading back to the land of Judah. Now, more than likely, she went up to the northern end of the Dead Sea and crossed the Jordan River to go across. That was the route that she was going to head. Now, why is that? Because that route had fresh water, it had places for them to stay, it was the traveled road of the day. Then she said to these daughter-in-laws, each of you go back to your mother's homes. She's telling them, look, you don't need to come with me. You go back to your mother's home. Go back to your people. May the Lord show faithful love to you as you have shown to the dead and to me, to my sons and me. As the Lord enable each of you to find security in the house of your new husband, she kissed them and they wept loudly. Now we read that and we see that's a kind act, but there's more to it than just that. Well, she tells them, she says, go back to your mother's home. The word actually is go, return. It's a double command. I mean, she's really not making a suggestion. She's telling them what to do. Go, return to your mother's homes. And then she says, may the Lord show faithful love to you as you have shown to the dead and to me. The word faithful love, it's a deeper word than what we read in the English. The word is hesed, H-E-S-E-D. And it's oftentimes translated as kindness, but it's kindness on steroids. It's kindness plus mercy. It's kindness plus devotion. It's kindness plus grace. It's kindness plus love. I mean, it is a great expression of care and kindness. And she said, that's what you've shown us. You could not have asked for better daughter-in-laws than what you have been, how you have treated me, how you treated my sons. But now, go back home. Go back to your families and live with your families. And then she says, may the Lord enable each of you to find security in the house of your new husband. And the word security, a good translation would say rest or peace. You see, they're young, widowed women. And here they are with their mother-in-law. And they're going to a foreign group of people. They're going to a group of people that speak different language. They're going to a people that serve a different God than what their peoples have served. And so Naomi said, go back home. And they said, no. We will go with you to your people. But then Naomi got a little firm. She got a little stern at that point, and she said, return home, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons who could become your husbands? You see, in Deuteronomy, for the Israelites, it was given that if a man died, his widow would marry that dead husband's brother. And that brother would be responsible for that widow and the children. He would also inherit whatever that brother owned. But she had no other sons, so there was no one else. And she said, I'm too old to have another husband. She even said, even if I could, would you wait around long enough for him to grow up to marry him? He said no. And look at the end of verse number 13. She says, my life is much too bitter for you to share, because the Lord's hand has been turned against me. Naomi's raw feelings are coming out right here. Naomi believed in Jehovah God. We see that back over here where she says, may the Lord, may Yahweh show faithful love to you. But now her feelings are coming out at this point. She's saying, I'm living a difficult life. I live a bitter life. The Lord's hand has turned against me. She's bitter. You know, we need to be careful. We can feel this way too. We can even let it come out, express it the way that Naomi did. But we need to be careful that we do not let the challenges of life, the sorrows of life, the heartaches of life be seen as the hand of God turned against us. Yes, in life we do experience all of these things. But God is ultimately always accomplishing His purposes as we see at the end of Ruth, that Ruth was ultimately going to marry a man who would become the great-grandfather of King David, who would be in the lineage of David himself. And so in verse 14 it says, again they wept loudly, and the daughter-in-law kissed her mother, but Ruth clung to her. Now the word clung here, we see the same word over in Job. Listen to this. It says, they are joined to one another, so closely connected they cannot be separated. One scale is so close to another that no air can pass between them. That's that word right there of clung to her. In other words, she would not let go. So Naomi said, look, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and to her God. Follow your sister-in-law. But here's what Ruth said. Now, we have heard these words spoken at weddings many, many times. And it's most appropriate, because it's a covenant. It's a vow that Ruth is making to Naomi. And so while it was between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law, yes, it's also appropriate to be between a husband and a wife today. But listen to these words. Naomi says, do not persuade me to leave you or go back and not follow you. 3 different times Naomi says, go back, go back, go back. It's almost as if she didn't want them. But Ruth did not listen. She did not take that against her as an insult. She said, do not persuade me to leave you or go back and follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Now listen, she's never been to Bethlehem. She doesn't know what it's like. It's new to her. But it doesn't matter. She said, look, where you go, I'll go with you. And wherever you live, I will live too. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There is the deepest of covenants right there. I will stay with you for all of your life. And there I will be buried. And even to the point that may God punish me and do so severely if anything but death separates me. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped trying to persuade her. So they go back to Bethlehem. Now, at this point, you would think, well, Naomi probably wraps her arms around her and they have this incredible relationship. But the sorrow, the hurt, the heartache in Naomi is so deep that she can't get over it at this point. And so when she gets back to Bethlehem, the people in the town gather around and they says, can this be Naomi? Now keep in mind, it's been 10 years. And Naomi replies in verse 20, don't call me Naomi, which means pleasant. Call me Mara. For she said, for the Almighty has made me very bitter. And she went away. But the Lord, and I went away full, but the Lord brought me back empty. Now think about this for just a second. Here's Naomi, and here's some women of Bethlehem. Haven't seen in 10 years, perhaps former neighbors, maybe some family members, some friends. And they said, Naomi, Naomi, you're back. She says, don't call me pleasant, Naomi. Call me bitter. She said, I left full. I've come back empty. Now think about this. Here is Ruth standing right beside her. And Naomi says, I've come back empty. I've come back with nothing. Can you imagine saying that in the presence of Ruth and how Ruth may have felt? But yet Ruth had made such a commitment to her. You know, as I've said this and read this, I wonder, you know, knowing my personality and my temperament, I would have looked at her and said, well, honey, if that's the way you feel, you can be empty. And I'd head back to Moab. But not Ruth. Ruth had made a covenant to stay with her and to be with her. In chapter 2, I'll let you read the first few verses, but Naomi comes in contact with Boaz. Boaz ends up being a family member, we'll discover next week. But she goes out into the fields to get some grain. The law said that those that were poor, they could follow behind and pick up some of the grain and the stalks that were left. And even it was intended to leave some for the poor by those that were gleaning the harvest. But down in verse number 8, I want you to see this as we close the lesson. It says, then Boaz said to Ruth, listen, my daughter, don't go and gather grain in another field, and don't leave this one, but stay here close to my female servants. Now this is the field that Boaz owned. See which field they're harvesting and follow them. Haven't I ordered the young men not to touch you? When you're thirsty, go and drink from the jars the young men have filled. Boaz is already protecting her. He's providing for her. And she bowed her face to the ground, and she said to him, why are you so kind to notice me, although I am a foreigner? And listen to this. Boaz answered, everything you have done for your mother-in-law since your husband's death has been fully reported to me. How you left your father and mother in the land of your birth, and how you came to a people you didn't previously know. May the Lord reward you for what you have done, and may you receive a full reward from the Lord God of Israel, whose wings you have come for refuge. God is at work. We may not always see what God is doing. We may experience the trials and the tribulations and the heartaches and the sorrows of life, but never lose sight that God is still God and God is accomplishing His purposes. Have a blessed day.